Hi, everybody. Thank you first for listening to this talk, and also thanks to Steph and Karen for organizing the session. I'm going to talk about women's subsistence cooperation among Shotagore in Bangladesh. So when evolutionary anthropologists study cooperation between same-sex or same-gendered individuals, what they often conclude is that men cooperate more than women. And the reason for this is that there are trends across cultures. One is that men are more likely than women to cooperate in large groups, and this is often attributed to warfare and hunting. Um, Women are more likely to form dyadic relationships with one another than they are to cooperate in large groups. And this is often attributed to biological demands of childcare that have existed throughout human evolutionary history, as well as restrictive divisions of labor. But what we know is that there's actually quite a lot of variation, and particularly when it comes to subsistence cooperation. So, for example, while men certainly do hunt in larger groups under some circumstances, there are also a number of societies where men hunt in small groups of people, and also a lot of examples where men do the majority of their hunting activities all by themselves. Men and women also cooperate with each other to provide resources for their households. And across all types of subsistence systems, there are numerous examples of women working together to access resources. Because of the trends that exist, though, there's been a lot of work done to explain why men work cooperatively with one another, but relatively little work has been done for women. And so we still don't know why women work cooperatively. Shotagore women traders in Bangladesh provide a really excellent example of female-female cooperation in subsistence work, and so that's where I will focus the rest of my talk. Shotagore are traditionally boat-dwelling and semi-nomadic. Communities exist on rivers and canals throughout Bangladesh. And in Matlab, where I work, there are 5 Shotagore communities where households have either recently moved onto the land in the last 5 to 10 years or currently still living in boats. I also want to mention very quickly that the Shotagore represent a very small minority ethnicity in the country, as well as in Matlab, where the majority of people are Muslim and Hindu agriculturalists and wage laborers. Shotagore households are organized largely around the nuclear family, with monogamous marriage being the overwhelming statistical norm in the communities, and dwellings existing of really only members of the nuclear family, primarily because they're too small to accommodate others. But most people live in communities where at least one or two members of their extended family also live. 95% of Shotagore men in these communities fish as their primary occupation, and they usually do so, they do so either with their wives and their children, or they work in small groups of men, usually 2 to 3, because that's what's efficient, and that's the number that will fit on a fishing boat. Uh, when men fish cooperatively, which is most of the time, they share costs and returns equally with all of their adult cooperative partners. Shotagore women have 2 occupations that are available to them. So fishing is done almost exclusively with husbands and children, and almost never with individuals outside of a woman's own household. And obviously, when they do this, they're sharing the costs and returns within their nuclear family. Trading, however, is a completely different beast altogether and is unique in a lot of ways compared to a lot of cross-cultural research that's been done. But basically, when women trade, they leave their own communities. They carry these very heavy baskets full of household goods out into the villages in Matlab, where they sell the goods door to door to non-Shotagore women. The result is long and very physically demanding days and work that's not compatible with childcare. And in fact, Shotagore women report never taking dependent children trading with them, and say that if they don't have childcare available, they just don't work on those days. When women trade, they often, almost always do so in small groups of women, usually averaging 3 to 4 women, and they share the costs of trading, which are typically transportation costs. Because the work itself is done individually, though, the women don't share the returns with each other. They take them home and share them within their nuclear families. The differences between trading and fishing result in differences in numbers of cooperative partners. So Shotagore women who trade report more cooperative work partners than women who fish, and also significantly more cooperative work partners than men who fish. And why do they do this? We expect women, just like men, to cooperate for all sorts of proximate reasons. So things like safety, economic efficiency, socialization reasons. But there are three ultimate explanations that we want to focus on to try to understand why women work cooperatively. The first is kin selection. This basically suggests that individuals can benefit their own inclusive fitness by cooperating with close kin. And in this model, there's really no expectation of help being returned to them. This is often used to explain female-female cooperation in childcare. But if we want to think about why women cooperate in work, we would predict that women will be more likely to cooperate in work with relatives than with non-relatives. Reciprocity suggests that cooperation can evolve when partners are likely to repay the favor, and that this basically outweighs any costs that are incurred to an individual by cooperating. This is often used to explain cooperation among men in hunting and meat sharing, but it doesn't lend itself particularly well, especially not a direct reciprocity explanation doesn't lend itself particularly well to explaining cooperation in women's work, largely because the resources that women tend to target are usually smaller and not widely shared within the community. Instead, we suggest that reciprocity across domains might be a better explanation. We predict then that cooperation in one domain, and we're focused primarily here on work, will predict cooperation in another. And given the importance of allo parents for Shotagore women traders, we expect that to be childcare. Finally, kin selection and reciprocity are not mutually exclusive of one another necessarily. And we know that in the real world, kin have reciprocal cooperative relationships with each other all the time. And so if this is explaining women's cooperative trading, we would expect that relatives who cooperate in work are also more likely to cooperate in childcare. In order to test these predictions, we'll use data from 2017 that were collected as part of the Endow project and represent a full network of one community of households in MATLAB. I want to acknowledge my research team who we collected all this data together, and they are really truly invaluable to this project and my larger work as well. In order to test the kin selection prediction, I'm just going to show you some preliminary bivariate GLM results here. Are women more likely to trade with kin? No. These results suggest they are not more likely to trade with kin than they are to trade with non-kin. In order to test the reciprocity predictions, we use an exponential random graph model. And what we're doing here is predicting a tie between each pair of individuals in the childcare network, given a tie in the work network, and also given relatedness. And the reason that we're predicting in this particular direction is so that we can include the entire childcare network in our model. So, does a work tie predict a childcare tie? The model suggests that yes, it does. Given a tie in the work network, 2 women are more likely to have a tie in the childcare network as well, and that's regardless of their relatedness to one another. But what about reciprocity among kin? We then expected that kin would be most likely to cooperate across domains. But we find that that's not the case, or at least the model is suggesting that's not the case among these women. Um, Relatives who work together are not more likely to be named as potential childcare helpers. But the reason for this might simply be that those individuals are less available to one another because they're working together at the same time. So, taking all of our results together, we don't find support for either kin selection or reciprocity among kin explanations. And this really suggests that what's going on here is that kinship doesn't seem to be a driving factor behind women's decisions about who to cooperate with when they're trading. What we do find support for is reciprocity across domains. And I want to dig into that a little bit more. So recall early on, I showed you that Shotagore women who trade cooperate with more individuals in work than either men or women who fish. Data from the network surveys also shows that the average relatedness of traders' work partners is lower than fishers' work partners for either men or women. So women who trade are more likely to work with unrelated individuals. And finally, traders are more likely than fishers to name unrelated alloparents. So, why are they doing this? Why are women who trade working with more people more likely to work with people who are unrelated and also more likely to seek childcare help from people who are unrelated to them? Basically, we think that reciprocity across domains is showing that women who trade are casting a broad net. They're using their work ties to basically get additional help in childcare, which is really critical for them to be able to work in the first place. So, taking all of our results together, these results really demonstrate variation in cooperation between same sex, same gendered partners for both men and women. And this is important because it adds another data point that contrasts with the notion that men cooperate more than women. For Shotagore, particularly Shotagore women traders, contrasting with Shotagore men who fish, this is simply not the case. Our results also suggest that when the benefits of cooperation are not shared, as is often the case for women's work, then partners might be more likely to benefit from reciprocity across domains. This should be particularly important when the work that women do is incompatible with childcare. Women might be purposefully broadening their work networks in order to gain more potential allo parents. And cross cultural data show that even for women foragers, there's a lot of variation in how compatible their work is with childcare, particularly based on the age of the child. And so we would expect this explanation to apply broadly across women in a number of cultures. So I want to thank the Shotagore for working with me since 2011, my field team, my funders, my collaborators at ICDDRB, and also my collaborators in the Endow project. Thank you very much.